Welcome to Chapter 4, The Leader as an Individual. There is a lot to unpack in this chapter, a lot to go over. So today I will give you a brief overview of those concepts. And as always, if you have questions about any of the material, please do not hesitate to reach out and ask. And as always, there are more details in your textbook that will expand on these ideas. So a number of objectives to go through today. The first is really to understand the importance of self-awareness and blind spots as a leader. And hopefully during the type focus exercise, you begin to develop a little bit of self-awareness, if you hadn't already, into your personality and your values and your traits. Because another important concept is really to understand how your personality influences how you lead. And it also influences the organization's relationships. How you relate to people within the organization is highly dependent on your personality. Another objective of the chapter is to clarify your instrumental and end values and recognize how values guide your thoughts and behaviors. Define attitudes and explain the relationships to a leader, and explain how attributes and recognize how perception affects leaders. So this is how you personality, how your traits, how your characteristics really impact you as a leader. Recognize individual differences in cognitive style. What does that mean? Individual differences in how people think, and broaden your own thinking style to expand your leadership potential, right? The broader you think, the more potential you have as a leader, because your ability to relate with a diverse group of people increases. And then really understand how to lead and work with people with varying personality traits. And I'm hoping, again, that type focus personality gave you an idea of your personality and your traits, and as we move forward with that assignment, you'll explore what it's like to work with people from various different types of personalities and values. So like I said at the beginning, being conscious of your personality, your traits, your emotions, your values, your attitudes, and your perceptions really help you as a leader. If you are self-aware of who you are and what you stand for and what you value, people are more likely to follow you. Every person has blind spots, and a blind spot is simply defined as a characteristic or habit that you're not aware of, that you have an issue or a challenge that really affects your growth and your ability to succeed. We all have them. It's crucial that you go through a self-awareness process, that you have colleagues and you have your boss that tries to continue to encourage you to grow as an individual, because we all have these blind spots. Like I said earlier, effective leaders know who they are and they know what they stand for. It allows people to know what to expect from them, right? People get behind someone who has confidence in their beliefs and they say, this is what I value, come follow me. People require self-awareness and self-reflection to really avoid these blind spots. So you need to take the time to really think about where you need to improve and how you can grow as both an individual and a leader. So personality is simply defined as the set of unseen characteristics and processes that underline a relatively stable pattern of our behavior. So the way we kind of show up, right? Some people will say we're extroverted or introverted or very caring or maybe a little bit cold, or we're very thoughtful. All of these are aspects of your personality. Some people argue that they're inherited from our parents, and other people think maybe our experiences in life, this is how we develop our personality. So today we're going to go over 5 personality dimensions. These are 5 general dimensions. Each of you will probably have a little bit of each of these dimensions. But think about, as I go through these, where you kind of fall on the scale of extroversion versus introversion, being agreeable, not agreeable, conscientious, are you emotionally stable, and are you open to experience? Because all of these things will impact how you lead and how you show up in an organization. So extroversion is the degree to which a person is outgoing. They're sociable, they'll talk, talkative, they're comfortable in meetings, and they like to meet new people. These people often like to take control, they're self-confident, and they seek positions of authority, and they like to be competitive and assertive, right? So these often make good leaders, people who have these types of characteristics. Not all extroversions or extroverts are good leaders, and it doesn't mean that introverts can't be good leaders. This is simply a number of characteristics that typically align with certain types of effective leadership. So agreeableness is the degree to which you are able to cooperate and forgive and understand and work with people. You're warm and approachable. If you're more agreeable, you're more likely to keep your job. So that's a positive thing. But if you're too agreeable, people don't often feel like they can follow you. So you don't get promoted because you agree with everyone on every topic. You don't stand for anything. So it's important to understand that being agreeable is good, but only to a certain extent, right? You have to stand for something. Conscientiousness, and that's the degree to which you are responsible, dependent, and persistent. And you are goal or achievement oriented. This is very, very important for effective leaders because you want someone who can achieve the organization's goals, right? And it is more important than being an extrovert. So emotional stability, degree to which a person is well adjusted, calm, and secure. And of course, all of our leaders that are effective need to be emotionally stable. They can't get angry quickly and start to lash out on people, maybe treat people poorly because they're coming from an emotional place, right? And if you have a low degree of emotional stability, you can't really handle the stress or tension or responsibility that comes with leadership. Open to experience. This is really important, right? Degree to which a person has a broad range of interests and is willing to consider new ideas. You have to be open-minded and you have to be willing to change and adapt. We are living in a world that is constantly changing and adapting. And if you are not a leader that can adapt and change, then you aren't going to be very effective because you become stagnant very quickly. So those are the big 5 personal dimensions. So locus of control, this is a really, really powerful idea. And they say there's 2 types of people. People that have an internal locus of control and people who have an external locus of control. If you have a high degree of internal locus of control, people believe that their actions determine their destiny in life, that how you act as an individual will determine who you become and what you achieve and how you experience the world. On the opposite end of the spectrum, high external locus of control, people believe there are forces in the world that control who you are and how you show up in the world, right? You've heard this. Some people say, well, you have to play the cards you are dealt. And what that means is you're dealt certain cards in life, and maybe it is a card game, and you only have the ability to play those cards. That is someone who has a high external locus of control. Other people believe, listen, regardless of the cards I am dealt in life, I can achieve and experience and be who I want because I'm going to take control of the situation and put forth enough effort to achieve what I want to. So that's a really good idea of what locus of control is, and it's a very powerful concept. So this just goes over some tips with dealing with extroverts and introverts. I'm not going to go through all of these. I'll let you read through them on your own time. So authoritarianism, the belief that power and status differences should exist in an organization. So these are traditional top-down organizations where they believe that the person at the top should wield a lot of power and that they're autocratic in making decisions, meaning that they'll make all the decisions. They won't include other people in the organization. And obviously, differences between the leader and the follower affects the leadership's effectiveness, right? So if you're a very authoritative person, you don't often have strong relationships with people in the organization because you simply don't care what they think or how they feel because you're going to make all the decisions. So this is, in a lot of ways, an outdated um, way of leadership for certain organizations, right? If you're in the army, you might want a more authoritative boss because a lot of things are life and death and they don't want questions, they don't want ideas, they just want you to make decisions quickly. Or a police force or certain types of organizations where decisions have to be made quickly and they're life and death, so you don't want people kind of questioning decisions. But having said that, even these organizations should have a degree in which they include the people in those organizations to help make decisions and improve them. So, what are values? And these are fundamental beliefs that an individual considers to be important, that are relatively stable over time, and that have an impact on the attitudes and behavior. And we'll find that people's values change throughout life. They change in different cultures and different times and different parts of the world, right? Values are not necessarily universal. They do change and they are very individualistic. So instrumental and end values are two types of values. Instrumental values, beliefs about the types of behavior that are appropriate for reaching the goals. On the other end of the spectrum, end values, sometimes called terminal values, and these are beliefs about the kind of goals or outcomes that are worth trying to pursue. Instrumental versus end values. Values, differences, and influences. So individuals differ obviously in how they prioritize values, right? Some people are very family oriented and they value their family. They want to spend a lot of time with their family. All of their decisions are made considering their family's opinion. Other people are very individualistic and they don't spend a lot of time or energy trying to think about what their family feels or what their opinions are, because that isn't high on their values. Identify and understand value differences to improve communication and effectiveness. Of course, you want to be able to identify people's values within the organization and try to understand them. According to the research, values are established by early adulthood, but they can change. And for leaders, values influence how they relate to others, perceive opportunities and situations and problems, and make decisions, right? Based on what you value, you are going to lead differently. Differences in leaders and non-leaders values ranking. So here's a really good diagram demonstrating how even if you have terminal values, if you're a leader, those are different than if you're a follower. If you have a number of instrumental values, your instrumental values are different as a leader than as a follower. So if you are a leader, you have to understand that the people you are leading, non-leaders, may have different values than you. And this is important because it will impact the way you behave and how you interact with those individuals. Attitude, an evaluation either positive or negative about people, events, or things. So I'm not sure if you've come across these before. It's very interesting, and I do not know where you fall on this spectrum, but there are two theories, Theory X and Theory Y. Theory X believes people are lazy and they have a natural tendency to avoid responsibility, where Theory X, they assume that people do not inherently dislike work and that they are willing to commit themselves to work that they care about. So I'm not sure where you fall on the spectrum, that if you believe that people are lazy or you believe that they will commit themselves to willing to commit themselves to meaningful work. But you could see how this would definitely influence how you lead, right? If you believe Theory X or Theory Y, you are going to treat the people that you work with much differently. Here you go. Here are attitudes and assumptions of theory X and theory Y. So you can see how different the theory X assumptions are versus the theory Y. And again, I'll let you go through that when you have more time and more detail, but you can see that your assumptions, depending on what you believe, would be much different about people. Perception is the process people use to make sense of the environment by selecting, organizing, interpreting information. So how do you perceive the world? So perceptual defense, these are errors in judgment or distortions, ways in which your thinking it might be flawed. So perceptual defense, errors in judgment that arise from inaccuracy in perception. So you're just not seeing the whole picture, or maybe you're seeing part of the picture and the parts that you're missing, maybe your blind spots are inhibiting your ability to maybe make a sound decision. Stereotyping, I think most people know what that is, and that's simply the tendency to assign an individual to a broad category, saying that all people in a certain category behave a certain way because they're a part of that category. On the other end of the spectrum, the halo effect is an overall impression of a person or situation based on one characteristic, saying that because they behave in a certain way, sometimes in one situation, that's the way it is always. And it can be favorable or unfavorable. Projection is the tendency to see one's own personal traits in other people, and perceptual defense is the tendency to protect oneself by discarding ideas, situations, or people that are unpleasant. Attributions are judgments about what causes a person's behavior, either characteristics of the person or of the situation. We have internal and external, and internal are characteristics of a person led to the behavior. External are situations that cause the person's behavior. So a little bit like internal and external locus of control. Fundamental attribution error, the tendency to underestimate the influence of external factors on another's behavior and overestimate the influence of internal factors. So this error happens when you say, it is someone's fault that something happened. It must be something internally, and really discounting what are the external factors that may influence that person's behavior that might be, in some cases, more important than the internal processes. Self-serving biases is the tendency to overestimate the influence of internal factors on one's success. So this is almost the opposite. And what you're doing is you're saying, okay, I'm going to be successful because of my internal factors, and you really don't take into a fact or consideration the external factors as much as you should. Cognitive style is just the way that you think, interpret, process, and use information. And this can change, again, from individual to individual and from culture to culture. So it's important to try to understand if people process, interpret, and use information differently than you do, how do you communicate that as an effective leader to make sure multiple people that perceive information differently all understand what you're trying to say? So these are patterns of thinking. I hope before you've heard of left versus right hemisphere individuals. Left hemisphere individuals are logical, analytic. They like linear thinking. And right hemisphere are more creative, value-based thought processes. And the whole brain concept is an approach that considers not only a person's preference for right versus left brain thinking, but also conceptual versus experimental thinking, identifies the 4 quadrants of the brain related to different thoughts and styles of thinking. So here's a breakdown of Herman's whole brain model. And maybe you can see yourself in this model. Are you more of a logistic, analytical thinker, or more of a holistic, intuitive? Are you organized and sequential, and more feeling-based and kinesthetic? Right. This also goes back to a little bit of what we covered in the tight focus. Where do you fall within this model? And how do you relate to people that are in the other pieces of the pie. Myers-Briggs is a simply type focus, right? This is the type focus assessment that you took is based on the Myers-Briggs test, and it's a test that measures how individuals differ in gathering and evaluating information and solving problems and making decisions. And it uses the 16 different personalities. And this you should recognize. Introversion versus extroversion, sensing versus intuition, thinking versus feeling, and judging versus perceiving. These are the same indicators that are present in the type focus survey. Guidelines for working with individual personality types. Understand your own personality. Treat everyone with respect. Acknowledge each person's strengths. Strive for understanding. And remember that everyone ultimately wants to fit in. So that is a brief overview of chapter 4. I know I covered a lot. There's a ton of definitions in there. Please take the time to read through chapter 4 in more depth so you understand all these concepts, and complete the chapter quiz, which will give you a good idea of how much you understand. Again, any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out and ask, and have yourself a great rest of the day.